All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the show. This is the Slate DraftKings program. We take you up until just shy of 6 o'clock. It is a Monday, March 6th. Glasheen and Ulrich. Jeff, what's up, man? I feel like we haven't talked in a while. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a while. I've missed a couple shows. I think you missed a show or two,
Yep.
and I mean, but they can only keep us apart for so long. The strongest duo on DraftKings, obviously, carried the Madden Sims for years and years with our witty banter and perfect impressions.
Wow.
We'll get it done.
You really turned back the clock there. I wasn't expecting that. We have quite a bit to get to. Some newsworthiness in the NFL. Like end of last week, I remember Thursday and Friday last week, there wasn't much to even discuss, but the Derek Carr contract is something we definitely want to talk about. We can look ahead to the Players' Championship at the end of the show and also maybe take a gander at the NHL slate. There's a couple games tonight. Derek Carr to the Saints, 4 years, $150 million. He's getting $100 million guaranteed. Of course, our purposes are not about the contract. We're curious as how this might fit, what the fit is like in a watered down division. All four starting quarterbacks now in this division will be brand new. What's your leadoff take on Derek Carr to the New Orleans Saints?
I mean, it's one of those things. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like bleh. It is what it is. I mean, do I think it's going to make the Saints a contender in the NFC? No, not really. Probably not. But are they in the weakest division in football? And do they have a chance to win it? Yeah, they probably do. So, I mean, it makes sense. Like, quarterback is an extremely important position. They need to go and get someone. But, $100 million in total guarantees, $60 million guaranteed at signing. My God, man, like just I think you just be better served just building through the draft. Like I really do at this point. So I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. If the Saints had done that, or if they just gone with the cheaper option and then tried to reinvest, maybe they just aren't as competitive next year, and they're just foregoing a chance at competing for the division title. But Derek Carr, what we saw from him last year on the field was a guy who can't stand up under pressure, a guy who when things changed a little bit, changed up. He wasn't as good. His stats bore that out. They declined last year. And, I mean, if you're going to get the Derek Carr that you got last year, this deal's going to look terrible very quickly. So I was really hoping that Derek Carr wouldn't go to the Jets because I think the Jets have a legit shot. But this does make the division a little bit more interesting. We're going to have to see what the other teams do, what Tampa Bay does, if they reinvest in the quarterback position, or if they're going to roll Kyle Trask, or if Carolina can get something done. But right now, it certainly gives the Saints a better shot at being competitive, more competitive next year. But do I think it makes them like a serious contender? I really don't.
Yeah, I think, and plus, the one takeaway, too, is Derek Carr finally plays for a team that has a defense. The Saints, the last 3 years, have had a top 10 defense, scoring defense. But for me, I think what jumps off the page, and it's easy to sink your teeth into what Carr does for the Saints, but I think what he also does is he opens your eyes about the rest of the division. Pardon me, not the conference, the division. I think this is an overreaction. I think Carr's good, but if you're anti Derek Carr, then you should be more interested in the Carolina Panthers at plus 240 now to win that division, or the Bucks at plus 390. Two teams that, yes, to Jeff's point, we don't know what their plans are at quarterback, or they could go out in the market, go get Jimmy Garoppolo if you're Carolina or Tampa. I mean, you could make a case about Garoppolo really for any of these teams that remain, right? But they still have personnel on defense that gives you some hope. Like, okay, the Saints aren't overwhelmingly better, maybe with their skill guys, and they do have some guys on that defense that are pretty well established. But Carolina, in spots last year, tremendous defensive team. Even after the trade of McCaffrey, firing their coach, they were they were not an above average team altogether, but they were competitive. The Bucks had their issues on offense. That defense kept them in games last year. So if you're interested, if you're anti Derek Carr, I think as a better, you even look down at the NFC now. I mean, Carolina goes from a number closer to plus 2,000. Now they're plus 2,200, right?
Yep.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 30-1 now to win the conference. Maybe the division ones you want to wait a bit, but I think Carolina is still pretty formidable. I mean,
Carolina, it's interesting, their odds. Like, obviously, Frank Reich, I think, is propping them up a little bit. But a lot of what Carolina's going to do, like, if you want to get on Carolina now, it actually might be, I think it's a good suggestion. It might be a good time. If they go out and get CJ Stroud in the draft, I think it's probably going to mean these odds become a little bit closer. So I think the Panthers could become a bit of a darling, like later in the preseason here, later in the offseason, especially if they go out and get a quarterback in the draft, which it sounds like they're trying to make moves to do. So that is interesting with the Panthers. I'm not sure how much movement you'll see after that, but I'm pretty much in lockstep with you. I mean, if I'm looking at this division, I mean, you mentioned defense. Like, the Saints weren't even that good defensively last year.
Right. They've got names. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, they still have names, and you could see a bounce back season, but like you're relying on a lot here to go correct for the Saints. You know, Sean Payton isn't there anymore. Like, let's not forget. I mean, Dennis Allen, as a DC, sure, he's had some great seasons, but like as a head coach, it's pretty much been a flop. So that's I'll take Frank Reich over him. I may even take like Arthur Smith in Atlanta over him. Not a huge fan of Todd Bowles, but I do like the DC move he made, or the OC move he made with Dave Canales. Mm-hmm. So the division is interesting. I think it's still wide open, even with Carr there. Like I said, I understand it, but my God, man, like what a massive contract to give Derek Carr, a player who could well be on the way, kind of like, in the decline stage. I mean, this isn't like an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady here, where, they've just been elite for so long. I mean, this could really just be another boat anchor that the Saints have to overcome now, instead of just starting a bit more of a rebuild, a season or two early. So,
yeah. I mean, are the Saints, like, the irony is the Saints are in the same division as Frank Reich in Carolina, but I mean, I'll say this, like, it's not a great comparison because the Saints just gave Derek Carr 4 years, $150 million, 100 guaranteed. This has a feel to the Colts. Like, we're going to try out this Jameis Winston, who else did they bring in? They brought in somebody else. They bring in Andy Dalton. Do I have that right?
Yes, they brought in Andy Dalton. So
we're going to bring in Andy Dalton. We're going to try another veteran. Like, they gave Carr a lot of money, so this isn't like a flyer,
No,
like,
it's not.
If Derek Carr, I thought Derek Carr was going to get a flyer kind of contract, like 2 years, 45.
The thing is, there's not that many free agent quartloquarterbacks, so he kind of just, he hit the market at the right time, and I think he's smart in getting this done out of the way, because I think the longer it goes, the less likelihood he is going to get a deal like this. It is kind of interesting though, like. It's a lot of money. They've guaranteed a lot of money, but the cap hit may not be that substantial. So it's a kind of catch-22 as well in that regard. Like I said, it's an obscene amount of money. I think that the Saints should just try and reinvest in building up elsewhere and maybe trying to reinvest in the draft. But at the end of the day, you do need quarterbacks to be competitive. You're in a division where you can go and win. And if the cap hit does come through to just being like small, where they've structured it like that, the deal makes more sense from that perspective. So yes, it's a lot of money. It's an obscene amount of money, to be honest, to give Derek Carr. But if the cap hit isn't necessarily like, just ruining your team, then it's I think it does make sense from that perspective. So that's the management side of it, though. Like like I said, the on-field side of it is, I just don't know what the Saints have. I mean, I thought that they would be better last year with Dennis Allen, and it didn't come to fruition. And I'm just not sure if Derek Carr changes much versus having Andy Dalton for a year. So it's going to be interesting to see. A lot of ifs and a lot of like, relying on a guy who wasn't very good last year, despite having like Devontae Adams and a supposedly like offensive mastermind Josh McDaniels. So maybe McDaniels was the issue there. It certainly could be an argument, but Derek Carr did not have a very good season last year. And if that continues, this is not going to look like a very good signing very quickly.
I know this just got done today, but any knee-jerk reactions as far as fantasy, like Chris Olave, poor quarterbacks, right? Alvin Kamara, he's got a whole thing going on off the field, but was also banged up during the season. The Saints do have a late first round pick this year, because I think they had to swap, right? They had a pick swap this year with someone up at the front of the draft, or they gave up a first round pick. Was it for never mind. They're picking at the end of the first round. I know that, the Saints.
Okay. I can't remember what deal. I do remember them making some kind of deal, but I can't remember.
Yeah, they flipped a pick for they had to flip the pick for somebody. So they don't have it because their record wasn't very good this year, as we know. So they are at the bottom of the first round for this coming draft. Anywho, back to my original question. Fantasy upside for an Olave, possibly?
It should. I mean, this should be good news for Chris Olave at the very least. I mean, again, you have to look at all scenarios. I mean, if the defense bounces back here, Olave's still going to be working with a more efficient quarterback. Maybe his deep targets go down because the defense is a little bit better, but his efficiency should go up. I really think that the Saints aren't going to be that much of a different team next year. They're just going to be able to hit on the big play a little bit more because of Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr just has he's just better a downfield passer than Andy Dalton. Doesn't mean he's an elite passer, but he's certainly better in that regard. And I think working with Devontae Adams, that kind of shined through at the very least last season. So Olave's in a spot now where if the defense stays bad, and even if the Saints are bad, he's going to get a lot of targets, which is good for fantasy. So I think Olave's arrow is straight up with this move. But like you said, I mean, the offense here, what else do we really have to work with? I mean, Kamara could be done here. Like this, he may not even be available for a bit. This is that's not good news for him off the field right now. You haven't been following that. You've got Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, I believe UFAs, if I'm correct. And then you've just got the guys who've been there seemingly forever at this point. Callaway, Traquan Smith, who feels like he's been in New Orleans for a decade at this point. Rashid Shaheed, who's actually kind of interesting, but I don't know if he's going to carve out a full role for fantasy. So this is my point with the Saints. They've committed to Carr, and maybe the cap hit isn't big, but they don't have a lot to work with here. There's not another savior coming in. I don't think they're going to be resigning Thomas or Landry, or I don't know. What else do we have to work with here? So Olave certainly could just get a boatload of targets, but this offense and this team as a whole, you start to look at it and it doesn't sound super appealing. So if this O-line regresses or anything, you got a statuesque quarterback in Derek Carr, didn't hold up well under pressure last year. I just don't really love the makeup of this team, to be honest. But for fantasy, Olave, absolutely. Got to think that the arrow is straight up. Again, wide receivers on bad teams can often be extremely, productive.
Yeah, and I think we figured it out behind the scenes here. The first round pick that the Eagles now own, the Saints' first round pick. They have the 10th overall pick in the draft. Saints also have another pick at the bottom with the Sean Payton trade. So that adds up. They still have a first round pick.
The Sean Payton. Yeah. That's
right. So they still have a first round pick. They just don't have a high pick. And I only brought up a high pick because maybe they could, as we see a lot of teams do, if they have multiple needs. And often if you're drafting in the top 10, top 5, you have not one hole, but many holes. But to bring the point home, they don't have, or the wide receiver market's not very good. So talk about Derek Carr and his appropriate timing. Well, for the Saints, timing of signing legitimate free agent wide receivers, that's not great timing for the Saints because there's not really anybody out there. So my thought was, well, what if they could use some draft capital and go get a guy? I don't know if they have the draft capital because they're so mediocre. I think you're right. Defensively, they've taken some steps backward. They need to get a little younger in a lot of areas. That's a great point. I mean, we can talk all we want about Derek Carr never having a defense. Has Derek Carr ever had an offense that's this kind of limited in terms of personnel?
Right. Yeah, it's true. I mean, you have
to tell that other side of the story, to be fair, right?
Yeah. Michael Thomas, I'm just remembering here now, keeping Michael Thomas is going to be really expensive for them. $30 million bonus. So I don't it may just be Olave and some scrub wide receivers here for the Saints next year, which is concerning for Carr. And then you've got
Against
Jarvis Landry's a free agent. What's that? Sorry.
Against good defenses in their division too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Tampa Bay still has a decent defense. The Panthers were better. They have a young emerging defense. Atlanta's still a bit of a question mark, but again, like Atlanta is a team on the build at least, and they're probably not going to be worse than they were last year in that regard. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're gonna have to watch and see what they do with Michael Thomas. But like right now, it looks like they've restructured it. They can certainly still keep some money if they release him, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be back. So
even if he is, like, you can't. You're asking Michael Thomas. This is the same thing they tried to do last year. You're asking Michael Thomas to be your solidified wideout too, and he was hurt.
I don't think he's going to be back with the team. I think this is kind of like a foregone conclusion, to be honest. But anyways, again, like that's just another body out the door for Derek Carr. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe the Saints reinvest in some wide receivers in the draft. It certainly looks like that's a position of need. But as you mentioned, I mean, they have more than one position in need, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, again, Derek Carr probably would have had more of a chance to being successful at the Jets, but I think that there's actually better options out there for the Jets. This is the way the Saints are going. I think they would have been better served by blowing it up at this point, but they're going for the division. Still not my pick, and certainly not going to take them as favorites. So,
wow. I mean, the more I think about it, I'm like, what the heck are they thinking? To be honest,
I mean, they still have a pretty solid defense. Like I could see that bouncing back, but some of these guys are getting a bit older. They've had injury concerns. Tyrann Mathieu, Lattimore, Cameron Jordan. Like these guys aren't young anymore. So, and they've got some holes to fill there too. Just looking right now at their contracts here. So interesting offseason. I'll have to see what else they do. They're not going to be able to maneuver much, certainly, with the cap.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, in my opinion, I don't think there's any value at all in Saints plus 140 to win the division. I think if anything, it makes you look at Carolina and Tampa a little more closely. Yeah, and if Atlanta makes a splash to go get Lamar Jackson or something, maybe. But anywho, okay.
This is the best way to sum up the Derek Carr moves. It's a great move for Derek Carr, and I don't think it's a very good move for the Saints.
Yep, I think I would agree. And right, Derek Carr is going to collect, and maybe if he elevates others and he has a defense, that might not matter. So before we move on to NHL and even the Players' Championship, what do you think this means? Because I think you hit the nail on the head. Could Derek Carr have gotten this contract from somebody else? Maybe. Maybe no one wanted to go this far or extend this far in terms of the committed money, the actual committed guaranteed dollars to impact a cap. But what I will say is, all the chatter was, well, Derek Carr is not doing a thing. Jimmy Garoppolo is not doing a thing until we find out about Aaron Rodgers. Does this have any effect on Rodgers? Do you think the Jets? You said you didn't want Derek Carr to go to the Jets. Did I have that right? Did you want Derek Carr to go to the Jets?
No, definitely. As somebody who's kind of bullish on the Jets for next season, no, I don't want him to. I didn't want him to go to the Jets.
So what do you think now about Rodgers? What does this mean for Rodgers? Because as far as teams that could be in the mix, you got the Jets, you've got Tennessee. There's another team, Vegas. What do you think? What do you think this means?
So yeah, no, I mean, look, like the Jets, I don't think the Jets were ever that. I know like all the news was coming out about Derek Carr and the Jets and them being infatuated with Derek Carr and career potential Hall of Famer, all that stuff. I think that was just all a show. I mean, I think that the Jets are very interested in Aaron Rodgers, and I think there may even be mutual interest because I think Aaron Rodgers is cerebral enough to understand that there's places where he can go and win in the next couple of years, and the Jets is probably one of them.
Yep.
I still think that the move makes a lot of sense for the Jets. They have an emerging young defense. They have a wide receiver core. They have draft picks. They have everything. They need to shore up the QB position, and they've got Zach Wilson. And, like they could go back to him and give another chance and just, burn another year of the rebuild, I guess, or maybe look to reinvest somehow with another young quarterback. But that will potentially take time. I think they have a team that proved last year that they're ready to win now. And they should be going after a guy like this. It does reek a little bit. You worry this reeks of Denver and another older quarterback. But like the Jets were in contention last year. This isn't Denver who's like trying to turn around their entire team or anything. The Jets were right there. And it was pretty obvious what the problem is. So I also think that Aaron Rodgers just, a little bit different situation than Russell Wilson. So is it necessarily going to work out if they bring Aaron Rodgers in? Absolutely not. But I think that as a Jets fan, you should be okay with that, because the alternatives for the Jets are, they were Derek Carr or like somebody like Derek Carr, or maybe Garoppolo. I would definitely prefer Garoppolo from a statistical standpoint over Derek Carr. He's a little bit younger. I think he manages the games a bit better, and I think he's actually be a good fit with the Jets. But as a Jets fan, I think you should be okay with either scenario. I really do. I think that this is just so obviously what they need right now that burning another year of the rebuild, it's not like a killer. The team won't be investing in any huge contracts, but at the same time, your team looks ready. Like, let's go. I mean, let's get somebody in here who could potentially at least win some games and get us over the hump and give us a shot in the playoffs. Rodgers could certainly do that, and Garoppolo, I think, could do that too.
Yeah, I think one thing, and I know you weren't saying this, but you kind of adhered to it, because I don't quite think, though, it's a Denver situation, because Denver, when they made the move for Wilson, I think that was an all-in move by Denver. They had yet to really establish a younger nucleus of a young. Nucleus.
I mean, they also had Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach, which I think is more of the story of what happened in Denver last year. I think they just had a head coach who was overwhelmed and not a good choice. I think that was more of it. This is going to be the third year for Robert Saleh, right? Is that
correct? Third year.
He's gotten some experience. The offense. Having Aaron Rodgers
not a quarterback yet. I mean, unless you like Mike White for a few weeks.
Yeah.
No, I only bring that up because I would be higher on the Jets' young core. Like, they've drafted so well the last couple of years that I think if they were to go in on Aaron Rodgers, as long as the price is right and they don't give up too much of that young core, both sides, offensive, the receivers they've drafted, the running back they drafted, some guys they've drafted on defense, at corner, up front, as long as they don't get silly with the offer and don't completely mortgage it. So I guess that is a Denver comparison, to your point. I just think they've done so well in the draft that they could afford to lose some chips. I would like to think, though, there is some, and I know I'm getting obsessed with narratives here, but there is some continuity with Saleh and Garoppolo. They were together in San Francisco. Yeah. You don't have to give up any draft picks, any young players. If the Jets were to make a move. Now, I'm really bringing this up with the Jets. The Derek Carr thing matters because the Jets were connected in reports. Yeah. And I only bring it up because the Jets' odds in the AFC have not moved all that much. They're still 14-1 to come out of the plus 1,400 to come out of the AFC. So that number still, to me, feels like they're in on something here. They're in on Rodgers. They're in on Garoppolo. Because if the Jets got Garoppolo, would you put them ahead of Miami? Or is Miami better?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many question marks with Miami.
But just from a market perspective, don't take your.
I probably would. Yeah, I probably would. As much as I love Mike McDaniel and I love that offense and what he was doing, there's still concerns with Miami. It's not just the quarterback. McDaniel wasn't the greatest in-game manager last season. The defense is still like a very big work in progress. I actually think the Jets are further along. In a lot of ways. And, if they get that quarterback stability, that may just take care of the rest. So, those two teams are both really interesting. I really think that this division is way more wide open than the odds are making it seem. Like I said, I really like the Jets at plus 380. And I think part of the reason why the Jets, you say, oh, well, why are they plus 1,400? Well, I mean, look, like they're going to do something here. Like, I just don't think that, I did. Obviously, an option is to go back to Zach Wilson and say, you know what? We're not giving up. We're going to maybe bring in like an Andy Dalton to mentor this kid, but, he's going to be the guy and we're going to try to go. They could do that. That's an option. But like, I think at the very least, it's going to be Garoppolo. And I think that if Garoppolo comes in, it's not going to be like, oh yeah, he's coming in to mentor Wilson. No, he's the quarterback and Wilson can just sit there and watch. Like, and if we see good things in preseason, good. And if Jimmy gets hurt again, which he probably will, then at least he got the Wilson backup. But I think at the very least, that's what the odds are baking in. And like, just from sitting back, that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, like they have to do something here. I think Garoppolo is like the floor that the Jets are going to do. And I think it's a good point bringing up Salah. I really do think that there's a good chance that's where he'll go, but I think that the Jets are also still exploring Aaron Rodgers. So, yeah, once this Jets thing gets figured out, a lot will come up. I would expect that either quarterback will cause these odds to move. So,
does a little Meese have a thought on Derek Carr?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Okay. All right. I hope everything's all right in there.
It's fine.
I mean, from a like a legal standpoint, we can't have young ones discussing odds. Okay, so let's get them out of the room, right, Matt. Behind. Okay, we're good. All right. Okay, yeah, but to drive the point home, the fact that the Jets number is still plus 1,400 to win the AFC, plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl. They're gonna get Rodgers or Garoppolo. I think, because if it's Zach Wilson, the odds wouldn't look like that. So, and to bring the whole story home too, Nathaniel Hackett is their offensive coordinator. So, yay. Make that of what you will. So that's
I mean
with Salah, like if they go out and get a quarterback, then I think there's more pressure on Salah. He's had some time here because of how incompetent Zach Wilson has been in their whole room because of the injuries too.
Yeah, no, the Nathaniel Hackett thing is obviously a link to Aaron Rodgers too. I mean, obviously Rodgers had some success with Hackett there, so I don't know. I mean, the Jets are linked to kind of everything at this point, and nothing that they do or don't do is going to surprise me. I think there's just multiple avenues, obviously, that they're going to explore. So
yeah, well, seeing the deal Carr just got from the Saints, I really don't blame the Jets because at least for the Saints, the rest of your division has a ton of questions at the position. If you're the Jets, you've got to get this right when you've got Josh Allen in that division. And Miami, I think Miami, if Tua is not the answer, they could lure someone in because of the weapons they have, and it's Miami. Players like Miami. Now, they got to get paid. The contract matters, number one. Number two, I think players will go to Miami. And in New England, they're still trying to figure it out. So, but Josh Allen, primary opponent number one. You've got to make sure you get that right because you got to face that guy twice a year. So look, the Jets played the Bills hard without a really good quarterback this past year. So, okay, very good. So we've got about 8-10 minutes to go. Let's. You want to talk to players here? You got some thoughts on the Players Championship?
Yeah, for sure. Let's switch to golf, man. Obviously, big week coming up. Biggest event of the year so far. So, I mean, it's. If you're new to the Players or if you're not, I mean, you know that it's TPC Sawgrass. There's a ton of water involved. It's just a very high variance course, what you call, where, players can go and make birdies on a lot of these holes, but also, at the same time, like double bogey or worse is it in play. I mean, there's water on 17 of the 18 holes. So it's just a winding little technical track that, just forces players to make really delicate approach shots. And if you're off, you don't just, hit it in the rough or a bunker. You potentially go in the water or you go and short side yourself and then you chip it in the water and all these different kind of terrible things happen. So it's a very high volatile event. You see a lot of the top players throughout the year actually miss the cut here. Guys like Cantlay have missed the cut. Even Rory's got a couple missed cuts over the last few seasons. I can't remember if Rory missed the cut last year, but again, like the top players are going to miss the cut. Like you've kind of got to embrace it. So I really like Patrick Cantlay this week at the top. I mean, we'll just start there. His odds on DK are down to plus 1,600, which, I mean, again, like if you got in early at like plus 2,000, great. Or if you got him at a bigger number, a couple weeks ago, great. But my God, like plus 1,600 is it's pretty down there. So you kind of got to make a decision there. I've made the decision that I really think he's in a good spot to win. Patrick Cantlay eats up Pete Dye tracks. He's an extremely good wedge player. His putter can absolutely go nuclear, and it has in the past and some of these big wins that he's had. I think he's just overdue to ship an event like this. We've seen him do well at majors before. He hasn't really competed that great at this event, but like I said, long term, this should be a spot for Patrick Cantlay. So I would love to get this and say, if this was plus 2,000, you should just hammer it. It's plus 1,600, so you kind of got to make up your mind. Do you like Cantlay that much, or do you want to dive down the board? There's certainly players in the plus 3,000, plus 4,000 range that you could look to. One guy I think is pretty interesting this week is Tony Finau. I think a lot of people are just sort of overlooking Finau because you think of him, it's a technical track. This isn't a bomber's course. I can't play Finau, but you look at what he's done. He's gained over 3 strokes on approach in 5 straight starts. He leads this field strokes gain approach stats over the last 50 rounds. And he's finished runner-up at Colonial. He's finished runner-up at TPC Scottsdale. He's got a top 5 at TPC Stadium. He's got another runner-up at another little rinky-dink course like that. Like, Finau can get his way around here. You know, he's not going to have to do anything impressive off the tee, which is fine. He can just take his long iron off the tee all week. And his approaches have been lights out. If he shows up with the putter this week, he's going to be in contention. So I would watch the odds on Finau. If they get down to plus 3,500, I think it's well worth to take an outright on him. Like Cantlay, he's just kind of overdue for a big win, but he has been playing extremely consistent golf of late. And if it doesn't happen for Finau here, I would really look to him at the Masters again, because that is a course he has had a lot of success on already. So just a player to kind of keep in mind. I'll be honest. I mean, like, this is also an event where, you know, you can throw some darts out there. My guy Chris Kirk at plus 8,000, I'm still very interested in. Coming off the win 2 weeks ago, but man, does he ever set up well for these courses? Has really been hitting his irons well this season. Certainly, like, very savvy player around the green. He's not going to lose his strokes there. Putting, if his putter gets going between like 10 and 5 feet, he'll make everything. I think you can go back to him here. You know, you look at that range. I prefer him over Harris English, who's never really had success here, was in contention last week. You know, guys like even Burns, who has done nothing this year. I think Kirk could come back and bounce back with another big week. So like him as well. I mean, I can keep going here. What should we keep going and mention a couple more players or what?
Yeah, a couple more. We got a couple minutes.
Okay. I mean, like Molinari at plus 13,000, semi-interesting. 14th last week, gained on approach. He had a T5 earlier in the season. He's got multiple top 10s at this venue. So Francesco Molinari, I would prefer Molinari as like a top 10 bet at plus 900. I think he's a very good placing bet this week. If he shows up with any kind of the same kind of short iron proximity stats, he's gonna be in contention. It's a very good track for him. He's had a lot of success here. We don't know exactly where his form is, but it's really encouraging what he did last week at Bay Hill. Can definitely Wyndham Clark has been playing better. His approach game has been better. The around the green game is okay. I think Wyndham Clark's another top 10 potential down here, maybe like a sprinkle on the outright. Adam Svensson at plus 18,000. These are all guys. I mean, you don't have to bet them all. But again, as we're getting down here, like, these odds are super appealing. Adam Svensson for DFS as well at plus 18,000. Gained a bunch on his stroke on approach last week. He's been good around the green. His around the green games look better. Like, this is a prototypical setup where you look for Adam Svensson and say he's a really good ball striker, especially in the irons. Does his putter come and go? Yes, but he's improved that area of his game quite a bit over last year. I think Svensson is a great top 10 bet as well. He's a great DFS play. So I'm not going to go too much deeper. I'll throw out one more name. He's really deep here. Dylan Fratelli at plus 35,000, plus 2,200 for a top 10. He's been playing okay golf. He made the cut at the Honda. He's been gaining on approach. Fratelli's a really solid all-around player too. Probably doesn't strike it as well as Svensson, but you know, if his putter shows up, man, like Cam Smith lost strokes off the tee last year. He gained 11 strokes on putting. I'm not saying Fratelli's going to gain you 11 strokes putting, but if he gains 4 or 5, he could be there sneaking around the top 10 as well this week. So a lot of players like that down the list. Familiarize yourself with them this week. They're going to be important for DFS. They're going to be important for your top 10 stuff. And it's going to be that kind of week where a guy like Fratelli, some random dude like Tyler Duncan, these guys are going to have a chance to finish top 5. I mean, I threw this out on Twitter. The last 3 runner-ups at the Players' Championship, Jim Furyk, Lee Westwood, and Anirban Lahiri.
Wow.
So, yeah, prepare yourselves for some wildness.
Okay, you can look forward to more golf coverage from Jeff, of course, during the week on The Sweat, 11 a.m. weekdays here on our DraftKings platforms, YouTube, Twitch, also on Twitter at DK Nation, at DK Live on the DK Nation Twitter platform. Also Wednesday, he'll be doing Golf Wednesday, the day before the event starts. Okay, very good. That's all the time we have. Thanks to Jeff Ulrich, Matt, and Eamon behind the scenes. Folks, we are here every weekday following that 4 p.m. Eastern Madden Sim. We have a couple of those coming your way tonight. San Francisco and Denver. Two teams we just discussed as far as teams that were related to the New Orleans Saints draft capital. So look forward to that coming up. Again, Sweat starts at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks for watching. You all have a great